Well, that feels like what Helen was saying is absolutely true. Kind of hot off the presses. If you saw any of the team walking in, they're staggering a little bit. I think Scott Wiggins said a few sentences, and he said, "Did that make sense at all?" I'm not sure if that really. And we really are just kind of in awe of what God has shown us. This was 8 days, just a full-on blitz. Literally, we did not stop from the moment our feet hit the ground. Even our day of downtime with shopping, were okay. 18 minutes, go, and you got to get back here. I mean, it was just nonstop because the Lord had so much for us to see in a short period of time. 8 days to be able to see as much as we could and encourage these pastors that we've been praying for from a distance, but to be able to actually be there to rub shoulders with them and see the work of God that we've been hearing about was exciting to us at first, and then we just constantly were in awe of what he was doing. So after plane rides and train rides and rickshaws, and I was on a motorcycle at one point, and a bicycle, and some kind of wagon that was motorized. After all of that, we got to see 8 different villages where these pastors were serving, and you're going to hear a few of those stories tonight, and I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about that. These pastors, the way this works is we have partnered with Evangelism Resources and then the Bahala Human Care Mission in Calcutta, where those 3 parties have come together to where a school of evangelism is training up pastors to send them out to these spots. Now, Calcutta is a densely populated city, and there's missionaries there, but out in the surrounding areas, there's essentially no one. So this school is training up pastors. Quest came along and sponsored them prayers and financially, and we're sending these pastors out to all these different areas. And Anjan Singh, the leader of the Bahala mission there, is overseeing all this. And when we got there, I thought I was going to do some encouraging and kind of, this was kind of a fact-finding mission for us. You know, how is it really going? Or what's the real impact that we're having over here? And maybe do some training, some spots where we could shore up some things or give voice to something. And I tell you, day after day, you would have been so proud to see the work in this place. Day after day, we said, it can't get any better than this. And we woke up the next morning before the sun got up and got to bed at 11 that night. And sometimes we go, did we eat dinner? We forgot if we ate dinner. And to just watch what the Lord was doing in all these different places continually blew our minds. As I haven't even gotten to talk with Pete yet. I just hugged him when he came in. And Pete, you would not believe these pastors. It's almost like we picked people out of this congregation and sent them over there. These guys have a different skin color and talk different, and they're shorter than John and I. But other than that, they could be on our staff. I met them. One time I sat in a church service, and we knew that 4 of those pastors were going to be there. And I have never seen their faces and don't know their names. And I picked them out as they came in, leading this crowd of people that kept congregating. And I'll get emotional talking about it. These guys have laid their lives on the line, literally, and said, Lord, whatever you need from me, I'm available. Would you just use me to bring maybe somebody to you? It blows my mind that all of that is supported by Global Cafe. Do you realize that the Global Cafe, the proceeds from Global Cafe go to support these pastors? So you buy a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning and someone comes to Christ halfway around the world. It blows my mind how God has done that and continues to advance things here at Quest Community Church, and just how he has blended those things together has been unbelievable. So we got there early on and started out to a place, and John was talking about going up to the north. We got on a 3-hour train ride and went up, got into a Jeep, and then eventually made our way to this spot. And we were greeted with a welcome that you can't believe, with flowers around our neck and just people blessing our feet, and it was just amazing. And as they shared their stories, we sat and listened to a girl who I thought could have been from right here in Lexington. Her name was Maria. And Maria came up, and someone said, Maria, they need to know you. And we said, well, what did you mean? And this was right after she had come in and kind of put some flowers around. So they said, this is Maria, and Maria came to Christ, and she was the first one in her Hindu household that did. And now everyone in her house knows Jesus because of her. The way... You got an 11-year-old girl who just said, okay, I'll follow you, and stepped out in a way where she could have just been cast out of the family, and her influence changed that whole area. We went from there, got into a Jeep, and went up a little farther, kind of in the coal fields. It was more like a prairie land, and all these coal fields, and we got to a spot, there was a kind of an oasis of houses, all these villages, and pulled up and got out. We didn't really, we had a guide with us, but we got out and started talking to people and recognized we were in a spot where a pastor had been sent there. It wasn't his home church, but he had raised up a house church and put a leader in place, and the whole village had come to Christ. 250-some people in this place, and we started interacting with these people, smiles on their faces, and again, flowers and the whole deal. We felt like celebrities the whole time. And we got to worship with them and hear some of their stories, and then we were off to the next spot just to encourage them. And as we walked out, I kind of looked over my shoulder, and they were renovating one of the houses, like adding on to it, kind of hut construction like you would see in Africa or India. And over the door, there was a cross being put into the cement. They hadn't even finished it. It was just being done that week. And I mentioned to one of the translators, I said, but there's a cross right here. He said, oh, no, that's... He said, that's brand new. And he was talking about cement. And we recognized later that it wasn't brand new that these people had come to Christ. That was new. And it wasn't brand new that architecture was being changed and their culture will look different from now on. It was brand new that in this place, a church was going to be built. A woman had come forward and donated land. She was a Hindu herself and came to Christ and donated land for a church to be built. And it wasn't that the church had died out in this area. Since the world began, the name of Jesus had never been spoken there. And now a congregation was celebrating what the Lord was doing, and it kind of blew us away, needless to speak. We went a few days later, and we went to a spot in closer to Calcutta, and it was more of a middle-class area. Another pastor had said, that's the spot where I feel like the Lord is sending me. I want to go and minister to these people and see what influence I can have in their lives. So it's not the poorest of the poor. In fact, we drove in and we were like, man, there's some big houses here. Still looked like India and still smelled like India, but some bigger houses. We go to this worship service, and people came in and were greeting us and talking to us, and then we understood that there were Brahmin in this area, which means they were the highest class, the highest caste of society, kind of the royal family, if you will. And a woman there had spent all of her money trying to be healed from this disease, and she was Hindu and had gone to every person she could talk to about this, and eventually got to the spot where she would talk to somebody about Christianity, and as she explored it more and more and more, she began to feel her heart be healed. She gave her life to Christ, and the disease she had just went away with it as they prayed and healed this woman. And she was a Hindu in this area that has influence. Soon after that, a Hindu priest that has, they talk about the Brahma having like a sash that they wear that kind of sets them apart. And this guy in broken English came up to us and he said, when I heard that Jesus was for me, that gift of grace was for me, he said, I threw it away. The thing that gave him influence in society, he said, I don't need it anymore. I just took it off and threw it away. And this guy now is sitting on the ground with all these people worshiping and praising God. We went to another place that was kind of out in the bush. This guy's name was Gautam. And Gautam was himself an idol maker, not just an idol worshiper, but that was how he made his living, was making idols. And in Gautam, we got to meet him and kind of his congregation. This was out, it felt like we were at Disneyland a little bit. It was tropical paradise. And got to talk with this church, and Gautam began to speak about how people had come to Christ there. And then at one point I asked Gautam his story through a translator. And Gautam, being an idol maker, heard the gospel, gave his life to Christ, coming out of a Hindu family, and his family cast him out. He couldn't come back. And his friends, so to speak, who were no longer his friends now, tied him up, put what he called chili pepper all over him and salt, and tied him up between some trees for the sun to just kill him. Someone came in the night and freed him. And this guy has never been back to his family again. And as he's telling me this story, he's asking me, would you pray for them that they would come to know Jesus? And this is a guy who stepped forward, threw his hat in the ring, and said, I won't just speak the name of Christ, I'll make his name be known. And Gautam now has 26 house churches that he oversees as a leader that's coming out of this ministry. And 26 house churches, and you put a pencil in the ground and draw that radius. And you look at the radius of how the influence is going out, and it kind of blows your mind. So the highlight of the trip for me, which I could not wait for, was a time when we were going to bring all these pastors together, kind of have a banquet for them where they could come and meet each other. They have conferences that they've been at before, but for us to be there and to bring them together to really celebrate their work had never been done. So they all came to this one spot. It looked like a luau. I mean, it was as people came in, the smiles on their faces, and we were taking pictures of them and really encouraging them, and we began to hear some of the stories of these guys, and we began to hear the persecution that was going on in their different areas. And at one point, the Lord had really laid 1 Thessalonians on my heart, and I began to share some of that. And as I talked to these guys, I said, why don't we just have a time where we can pray for people that are being persecuted in your church? And through a translator, it got mistranslated, and people began to stand up one after one and speak the names of people that had been persecuting them. And it wasn't a nebulous thing called persecution. It had a face, and it had a name, and it lived down the street from them, this person. And they said, would you pray for them and their family? And we had a prayer in that place as Anjan Singh prayed for them, and the work that was going to happen there. And these are guys that have smiles on their faces and a burning heart for the lost to come to know Him. And we then pulled these guys together. Here's 18 of your 20 Quest pastors. We look... interacting with these guys changed us, as you can imagine. And we did a little project while we were there. We took a map of the country and we marked where their churches were. And some of them hadn't really seen the map like all together before. And they began to see, well, if he's got this area, and if I've got this area, and if we've got this area, you began to understand we could actually do this. And the hope was just being built into them. We could actually win this country for Christ. And it just poured hope into us like you can't believe, just going and seeing. And we came back today to walk off the plane to come here and say to you, Quest, thank you so much. Thank you for supporting them financially. But really, I think, and I had one of the Anjan, the leader, actually spoke these words to me. He said, thank you for the financial support. But you know, it really doesn't matter. In other words, if our financial support stopped tomorrow, they would be right in the middle of what God has for them. Our prayers mean more than you could ever imagine. So I want to bring the team up and let them talk to you a little bit about what they saw.